Well, hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Dividend Compounders Show. Today, let's go ahead and compare Hershey to Campbell. I recently made a video talking about how the food stocks are falling and why I'm bullish on their misfortune. I think of it as an opportunity, as an optimist, especially since I can see a rebound happening in the future. And in that video, I did not mention Hershey or Campbell. They should have been a part of the list, but the video was already far too long. So here is part 2. I want to be honest with you, even though it's our first date and your face is a little funny looking, I own shares of Hershey already. Full transparency. So I'm trying to figure out whether I should double down on Hershey as they walk around their 52-week low price, or if I should open up a new position in Campbell. And if you think Campbell is only a canned soup business, then you are misinformed. They also own a delicious portfolio of savory snacks. For instance, did you know that Costco's Kirkland brand kettle chips are actually made by Campbell? And here's a fun fact. Last week, my family and I made a trip to Costco and we bought 2 of those really big bags of Kirkland kettle chips. And in no less than 7 days, I ate all of it. And you know what? I don't regret it. You only live once. And speaking of which, did you know that you can buy a sauna from Costco for about $4 grand? What you see on your screen right now, 4 adults can fit inside of there. That way, if you buy this and put it in your backyard, you can steam your smelly balls in peace and not worry about stinking up the place if you use the one at the gym. If you are one of those people that smell when you sweat and you go to the one in the gym and you feel self-conscious, hey, the Costco one is $4 grand. It's a small price to pay. No, but really, one of the biggest game changers that I have implemented into my own personal life is doing cold plunges every other day and utilizing the sauna about once a week. Apparently, when you put your body through voluntary stress like that to the extremes, it helps you to adapt and to become more resilient. And I heard there's a lot of cardiovascular benefits to both the sauna and the cold plunges. All right, enough yapping, and let's go ahead and talk about Campbell versus Hershey's. First, we're going to go ahead and look at their revenue side by side. Campbell is at $9.6 billion and Hershey is at $10.9 billion of dollars. So revenue is roughly the same, but Hershey's market cap is about 3 times their revenue at $34.4 billion. Whereas for Campbell at 12.9, it's almost a 1-for-1. Some people think that means a company is undervalued. Just like how there's some folks that are still collecting Beanie Babies because now they're undervalued and they're still trying to sell them on eBay 20 years later. It's time to move on, folks. The new useless junk to collect are Funko Pops. Get with the times. Next, let's go ahead and look at their free cash flow. A cash-heavy company is a good company because it tells us how much money a business has left over after accounting for expenses to run the operations and maintain the assets. Look at everyone right here bowing down to the king. Campbell posted $668 million of free cash flow in the past 12 months, which I would say is pretty decent. Who knew that canned soup and snacks would be such a good business? If you liked Campbell's free cash flow, well, then you're gonna love Hershey's because they posted $1.6 billion of free cash flow. And between you and me, that's pretty impressive to say the least. Like that one time you spent 4 years of your life getting a degree in philosophy only to end up working as a car mechanic and going home to a wife that hates you. But hey, at least you can practice what Marcus Aurelius preached about in Stoicism because you majored in it. And I may or may not be projecting my own life onto you. My apologies. With that said, please make sure my tires are rotated crisscrossed. I appreciate it. Thanks, here's a tip. Well, hold on. Why am I not talking about the intangibles of Hershey and Campbell? Why are we just looking at the numbers? Well, you silly nipple, I already made a deep dive analysis video for each of them. A ton of research and a compelling argument for both companies. So it's up to you whether or not you want to watch those videos. And if you choose to be a sack of lazy potatoes, then just know that food is not something that is going away. Food is crucial for human life, like water, oxygen, and sweaty nipples. And call me stupid if you want, but I'm more than happy to buy them now because my investing timeline is greater than 4 years. So if the food stocks are on a discount and I've been eyeballing them for about 3 to 4 years, why wouldn't I buy into it? Anyways, back to the video, let's go ahead and look at their dividend profile. First up is Campbell. The dividend yield is currently sitting at 3.4%, which I think is pretty good. It's decent, which means for every share of Campbell's that you own, the annual dividend payout is $1.48, and their dividend payout ratio is really healthy at 47%. But as a dividend growth investor, something that I do not like is that they have not been raising their dividend, and in fact, they have not since January of 2021. Campbell has decided to pump the brakes on increasing the dividend payments while they get their finances, operations, and margins back in order, which I feel like is a good fundamental business decision, but as a dividend growth investor, I don't really like it. And that's because they've been hit with the pandemic, staffing issues, supply chain issues, and now inflation. And when we take into consideration their average dividend yield for the past 20 years, well, that's 3%. And it's currently 3.4%, which means their current dividend yield is higher than their 20-year average because the stock price has been taking a beating lately, like your leather wallet that is old enough to vote. If your wallet is older than 20 years, it might be time to get a new one, especially if it's being held together by duct tape. All that to say, their dividend has been outpacing the growth of the stock price, which is pretty much a trend that is seen across all of the CPG food companies. And then next up, we have Hershey. Their dividend yield is 3.2%, which means for every share of Hershey that you own at about $170 a share, depending on when you watch this video, it might be like $180. The annual dividend payout is $5.48. And they grow that dividend payout right there on average by 12% year over year. Double-digit dividend growth. That's what I like to hear, friends. And the dividend payout ratio is 63%, healthy, sustainable. And when we look at their average dividend yield for the past 20 years, well, that's 2.3%. Similar to Campbell, Hershey's stock price has been lagging behind their dividend. But so far, I would say neither company is necessarily bad. It's just that one is a little better than the other. And now let's go ahead and review their total return. First up is going to be Campbell. For the past 20 years, the adjusted stock price total return has been 185%, meaning that stock price back in November of 2004 has grown by 185%, which, to be honest with you, is not that great because when you break it down year over year, the compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, well, that's 5.3%, meaning when you take into consideration the dividends paid out and share buybacks, your money would have grown at a rate of 5.3% year over year, which is not that great. But hey, at least it's still positive and in the green. Hopefully, the total return for Hershey is a better story. And yes, in the past 20 years, Hershey has grown by 430%. When we break that down year over year, the CAGR is 8.7%, which I would argue is pretty good. It's similar to General Mills and Hormel. And now, for the visual people, we're going to be looking at the value of 10 grand invested into both companies and reinvesting the dividends over a span of 10 years, from January of 2015 to October of 2024. With Campbell, that 10 grand would have transformed into $14,000. On the other side of the spectrum, Hershey would have turned that 10 grand into $21,000. I don't know about you, but having your money double in a span of 10 years sounds like a fun time to me. And you know what else is fun now that I'm a grown adult? Doing an annual Lord of the Rings movie marathon while sipping on some good beer. Which brings me to today's video sponsor, which is the fuzzy hair around your butthole. You should really consider doing something about that because it's pretty disgusting and that's why it attaches itself as dingleberries after you get done on the toilet. Alright, let's just go ahead and change the topic because that is gross. Now we're going to be looking at their debt. Specifically, we're going to be looking at their debt to equity levels. Once again, Hershey seems to have better debt management than Campbell's because Hershey's debt to equity ratio is 1.3, Campbell is just below a 2. And as a reminder, it really depends on the industry and sector, but anything less than 1 is above average, and anything less than 0.5 is world class, and anything under 2 is good. Anything above 2, and that's when you got to start investigating and raising the red flags. But since both of them are below 2, I would categorize them in the same level of debt management. But because we want to be nuanced, Hershey does have a better debt management level than Campbell. Alright friends, I think we've seen enough here. Hershey is the obvious winner between the two. Better performance, better finances, better almost everything all around. However, with that said, let me give you some updated intangibles surrounding the company. Inflation is sticking a fat thumb up Hershey's pea hole because the cost of sugar and cocoa is unfavorable right now. But my whole thing is, that can't last forever. Supply chain issues usually resolve themselves eventually with due time. And maybe during this hardship, they can push themselves to invest into healthy alternatives for flavoring, such as honey, monk fruit, or stevia, instead of using what they use right now, which is a lot of artificial sweeteners. And correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the ingredients and sweeteners that Bobby Kennedy should be happy with. I don't think he has beef with monk fruit, right? Because that's not too bad for you. And JFK Jr. being a part of the Trump administration should be the fire that Hershey needed to invest more into their salty snacks segment. Because right now, Hershey owns about 36% of the chocolate market share. The next competitor below that is Mars at about 29%. I could be wrong, but you can fact check me. Needless to say, Hershey dominates the chocolate scene. But until they can formulate their chocolate and candies to be quote unquote healthy, I think the strategy, especially for the operations, should be the salty and savory snacks. What you see on your screen right now are some of the portfolio offerings under Hershey's belt. Because the salt and savory snacks, in my opinion, there's a lot more growth there because they tend to be healthier for the most part. Like Skinny Pop popcorn. When you think about popcorn, how can you make that unhealthy, right? From the get-go, it's pretty good for you. Then again, there's a whole laundry list of health benefits of eating chocolate. So I think they just need to get their product managers to rebrand their chocolates to voice those facts, such as antioxidants and lowering cholesterol and a few other line items. Times are changing. People no longer want to eat a block of sugar. That was back in the 80s and 90s before we realized the health consequences and diabetes. But the fact of the matter is, we want to eat something that's sweet and something that's healthy so we can feel less guilty about it. So in my opinion, I think Hershey just needs to change their recipes, rebrand their chocolate and candy items, and go balls deep into the salty snacks. Will this hurt their margins? Absolutely yes for the short term. But once their chocolates and candies are healthy, I think it's going to open the door for more people to eat them. Because right now, there's a lot of people that are just like me who do not eat candy and chocolate because we know what it does to our body. But on the other hand, once it becomes healthy, I wouldn't mind putting some milk duds in my mouth. Yeah, that doesn't sound kosher, but I hope you know I was referring to the candy milk duds, which you see on the top right of your screen. You sick pervert. That's not to say Campbell is trash, because Campbell has been on my watch list for a while now. I have not bought into it. I've been monitoring their stock price movement, listening to their earnings calls, and just observing them from a distance like a creep. And what I know about that company is this. Their CEO has a laser-focused game plan that he's been executing to a T. For the longest time, Campbell was known as the canned soup company, but everyone knows that it's not exactly the most flourishing market. For instance, in 2017, their canned soup made up more than 40% of the company's revenue. And now, when we fast forward, canned soup makes up less than 25% of the revenue because they've been pivoting into becoming more of a snacks company. What you see on your screen right now are all of the different snacks that are operating under the Campbell label. By diversifying their portfolio of offerings, the company has been able to stay relevant. The relevance is in snacks, not necessarily in canned soups. And Campbell is not done yet because they're still in a phase of making inorganic growth. They're acquiring various snack companies. Some people say, oh, only organic growth is what matters, and I disagree with that. Sometimes you need to make strategic mergers and acquisitions in order to make your company more relevant and stronger and to eliminate the competition. So I actually support and love the idea of inorganic growth as long as it makes sense for your company. For instance, if Campbell were to decide to make swimming goggles all of a sudden, then I would be like, what in the cold turd are they doing? But because they're acquiring snacks and sweets and stuff that just makes sense under their umbrella, I support it. So I'm not all about that train of organic growth or the company sucks boat. I don't agree with that. Inorganic growth, if done right, can make a company a lot stronger, increase their competitive advantage, and widen their economic moats, as long as it makes sense to the investing thesis of a company. The big question is, can they make the pivot from using artificial ingredients for their snacks to using real, natural ingredients? When it comes to candy and chocolate, I can see that happening. But when it comes to goldfish, which is one of their more popular snacks, it might be a struggle, but we'll see what happens, right? I'm not a food scientist, nor am I going to pretend to be, so we'll see what happens with Campbell. And if you made it to this point in the video, one lesson that I'm learning right now that I wanted to share with you, this is unrelated to food stocks, so you can go ahead and click dislike on this video, but the fact is, no matter what happens, nothing is permanent. No matter how much the voice in my head tells me that I'm stuck or that I'm not good enough, I know that those are lies. Tomorrow and the next week are all opportunities for me to build into and develop new habits that are good for me. All that to say, if you've been in a bad headspace these days, change starts with you. Be nicer to yourself and keep in mind that it's never too late. Even if you're 64 years old, it's the perfect age to do something good to yourself and to others and to make a good, positive impact in your circle. And I know sometimes change is scary, but intentional decisions to do the good and the right thing time and time again can have a huge effect into the quality of your life. We're all a work in progress. If anyone acts like they're perfect, they're a fake. They're faking it. We've all got demons that we are fighting. And so with that, I genuinely hope that you are strong enough to overcome yours. Stay safe, and I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace.